In Edwardian Britain, the two worlds of rich and poor rarely met.
I went to the manager at Millwoods and I told him that if he didn't get rid of that girl, I'd never go near the place again. And I persuaded Mother to close our account with them.
And why did you do that?
Because I was in a furious temper.
And what had this girl done to make you lose your temper?
When I was looking at myself in the mirror, I caught sight of her smiling at the assistant. I was furious with her.
I think that she spends a great deal of time in and out of dress shops, making herself look presentable to get the right husband. She wouldn't have learned any other skills or anything, so it's just about being a wife, really. And that's what she's about to do, until the inspector turns up.
So you used the power you had as the daughter of a good customer and also of a man well known in the town to punish the girl just because she made you feel like that?
Yes, but it didn't seem to be anything very terrible at the time. Don't you understand? It's the only time I have ever done anything like that. And I'll never do it again. To anyone.
The best thing about her is her curiosity. She wants to learn and know more, which is her saving grace, really.
For women like Sheila, the route to a good life lay in marrying the right man. Outside the home, however, women were powerless. They couldn't vote. Emily Pankhurst began to change all that in 1903 with the suffragette movement. Through a campaign of sustained civil disobedience, hunger strikes and demonstrations, suffragettes fought vehemently for the right to vote. In 1913, one suffragette was killed throwing herself under the King's horse at Ascot. Sheila Burling wouldn't have been a suffragette before the inspector called, but after, she might well have taken up the banner, much to her mother's disgust.
Mrs. Burling, you're a prominent member of the Brumley Women's Charity Organisation. Aren't you?
She thinks she does good, sitting on this committee. She's a do-gooder, you know, in her head.
And naturally that was one of the things that prejudiced me against her case.
I should think so too, damned impudence!
You admit to being prejudiced against her case?
Oh yes, yes.
Like, there's nothing wrong with being prejudiced against this. Yes, yes. And the daughter, my daughter says...
Look, she's just died a horrible death, Mother. Well, I'm very sorry. But I think she had only herself to blame.
Was it owing to your influence as the most prominent member of the committee that help was refused the girl?
Possibly.
Was it or was
yes,
it not?
Yes, it was. I didn't like her manner.
The philanthropic charity groups barely scratched the surface of the problem and merely served to ease the consciences of the privileged few. Any measure which really addressed the problem, a few shillings a week more for Eva Smith, would horrify them.
You have no power to make me change my mind.
Yes, I have.
No, you haven't. Simply because I've done nothing wrong, and you know it.
I think you've done something terribly wrong, and that you're going to spend the rest of your life regretting it. I wish you'd been with me tonight in the infirmary. You'd have seen...
Please! I've imagined it enough already.
Then the next time you imagine it, just remember that this girl was going to have a child.
No!
Eva Smith took her own life rather than face the only avenue left open to her. With no social safety net, many women were driven into prostitution. For Eric, women like Eva were only good for entertainment. For upper class and lower class to marry each other would have been scandalous. Had he married her, polite society would have been outraged.
Look, I wasn't in love with her or anything, but I liked her. She was pretty and a good sport.
So you had to go to bed with her?
He knows that sort of judgment day is coming, and he has to come back and confess to what he's done.
Remember what you did, Mrs. Burling. You turned her away when she needed help most. You refused her even the pitiable little bit of organized charity you had in your power to grant her. Remember what you did.
My God, I'm not likely to forget.
Just used her for the end of a stupid drunken evening as if she was a thing, an animal. Not a person! No, you won't forget.
I know. I had her turned out of a job. I started it.
You helped.
But you didn't start it.
You started it. She wanted 25 shillings a week instead of 22 and 6. You made her pay a heavy price for that. And now she'll make you pay a heavier price still.
In a sense, it's an idealistic play. It says, if people were able to do their best and lead the best lives, things would be much richer in a deeper sense for everybody than, for instance, just grubbling for money. And so that's why the play, in a sense, is always relevant. He was, in some way, the conscience of the nation.
We don't live alone. We are members of one society. We are responsible for each other. And I tell you, the time will soon come when if men will not learn that lesson, then they will be taught it in fire and blood and anguish.
In 1914, Edwardian Britain was shattered forever by the First World War.
Sheila will be working in the hospital, she'll be working in the factory, she'll be doing everything she could to support the war effort. She'll definitely roll up her sleeves and get right down there and muck in.
I think he'd die really sort of stupidly and embarrassing. He'd skewer himself or die of food poisoning or something like that in his own trench.
I think Gerald would have had a very comfortable post, many miles from the trenches, moving things about on a board and not getting his hands too dirty.
Yes, I see.
I think Gerald could change, but he doesn't. He's betraying his whole class if he changes.
No girl has died in there today. They haven't had a suicide for months!
Which is why he finds every reason he can why the inspector is a fake.
Sheila, at the very end of the play, she's desperate for change and she wants everyone else to change with her. I do find the play optimistic. You know, she's now going to take responsibility for her position in society, which is pretty good news.
I don't think he's learned anything. The young win, there's no question about that, and the old lose.
That was the police. Girl has just died on the way to the infirmary after swallowing some disinfectant. The police inspector's on his way here to ask some questions.
The question for the first audiences in 1945, as they left the theatre, was what sort of world would they go out and build? Priestley gave them the answer.
We had a glimpse then of what life might be if men and women freely dedicated themselves not to their appetites and prejudices, their vanities and fears, but to some great communal task.